What is going on, guys? Welcome to the Reformed Reader, the channel where we review different forms of media through the lens of a Christian who is under the authority of the scriptures. My name is Josh, and today we're going to be doing a book review of The Shadow of What Was Lost by James Islington. This is book one in the Licanius trilogy. Now, before I get into the review, let's go over what is this book about. It has been 20 years since the godlike augurs were overthrown and killed. Now, those who once served them, the gifted, are spared only because they have accepted the rebellion's four tenets, vastly limiting their own powers. As a gifted, Davian suffers the consequences of a war lost before he was even born. He and others like him are despised, but when Davian discovers he wields the forbidden power of the augurs, he sets into motion a chain of events that will change everything. To the west, a young man whose fate is intertwined with Davian's wakes up in the forest, covered in blood and with no memory of who he is. And in the far north, an ancient enemy, long thought defeated, begins to stir. Alright guys, so the way that I normally structure my reviews is I go over the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good being the things about the book that I enjoyed, the bad being the things that I didn't care so much for, and these are preferential things, maybe a character I didn't like, maybe the prose, a setting, those kinds of things. But then I go into the ugly, which is what could be some sin that is steeped into this work that might hold a Christian back from picking it up, and I break it down into 5 categories. But before we get into that, let's jump right in and go over the good. So what were some things about this book that I enjoyed? There's quite a bit here. Number one is that this story is different. This story is quite a bit different. This book deals heavily with the theme of destiny. So I really loved the themes. Obviously, I'm a Reformed Christian, but aside from that, I really loved the way that James Islington was able to simplify some of these things. One of my favorite, probably my favorite thing about this book is that while reading it, I realized that James Islington is a brother in Christ. Not because he said it blatantly or anything, but because there is some good sound theology steeped into this book. Now that might be a drawback for some people, but for most of us, I think that you will really enjoy it because there are some really heavy questions asked here that are very common questions that are asked to Christians and really against Christians, like trying to catch us in, well, how could a loving God allow blah, blah, blah? Or is God really loving if he allows these things? Or is God really all powerful if? And so James Islington does an excellent job of explaining these things in a very simple way, but it's also phenomenally thorough. I mean, he does just an exceptional job there. Again, I can't gush enough about how much I loved that. I mean, it was like right in the middle of the book. There's a campfire scene. And for those of you that have read it, you know what I'm talking about. For those of you that are interested, once you get to the campfire scene, I looked up at my wife and I go, I think James Islington's a Christian. I continue to read and I go, okay, he definitely is, but I think he's a Reformed Christian. And then I found out after I did just minimal research, like a Google search, that yeah, he's a Reformed Presbyterian brother. Now that was really refreshing for me because I had been sort of in the trenches at this point with DNFing a lot of books. And so finally I picked up this big chunker of a book and had been really looking forward to this because it's a booktube darling. And I was just like, man, I really hope I'm not going to have to put this down. And the inverse happened. I was like, man, I love this book for so many reasons. So aside from that, the characters are great. We're following sort of a trio of characters. There's a few points of view in here. This story, this magic system, everything about it is really unique. So the characters are great. And I don't want to get too far into it because I'll end up spoiling something. And I really don't want to spoil anything about this book for those of you that haven't read it yet. So the characters are fantastic. The setting is pretty unique, sort of that medieval fantasy world, you know, a lot of the sword and sorcery kind of things. But there is some ingenuity there. There's a lot of like modern engineering that has taken place as far as like industry goes, and they figured out ways to use magic for industrial progress. And so that was really interesting to see. It's just me nerding out a little bit about it. But the characters are great. The setting is good. The pacing is pretty good. There's times where we really slow down. It's intentional. because there are some scenes in here where it is just like foot on the gas, go, go, go. And so it's almost like you're holding your breath, and then right when you don't think you can hold it anymore, you're able to go and just kind of slow down and take a breath and enjoy the surroundings and sort of grow with your characters. Not only that, but there are some real emotional high points in this book. I'll say the writing is very accessible. I don't think this is going to be a difficult book for people to read. I do think there are going to be some topics in here that might be difficult for people to grasp. But if you continue on with the series after this, he does explain all of it and tie it up and with a nice pretty bow. So now let's go over the bad. What were some things about this book that I didn't care so much for? Yeah, the pacing was a little bit slow at times. I definitely think that it was slow intentionally, like I said before, but I think maybe we slowed down a little bit too much, and that there were times when I was reading this book that I lost momentum. So, I was like, oh, I'm really excited. We got to this really cool part, and then we did pump the brakes, but instead of just pumping the brakes and going slow and progressing, sometimes it seemed like we jabbed the brakes, maybe even had like a hard stop at times. So I think the pacing could have been tightened up a little bit. It does tighten up in book 2. But with this being James Allington's debut novel, there's no way I could pull this off. I'm just some random redneck from Podunk, Alabama, trying to criticize this guy's book. So, take that for what it is. I mean, this is this guy's debut book, and it really is great. This is not as tight of a book as somebody that has written for years and years and years and really has honed in their craft. You can definitely see that is taking place during the writing. So maybe don't detract from it too much and understand, yeah, this is his debut novel. Now, I'm not saying that like, oh, cut him some slack or give him a break, because I mean, it is traditionally published and I've read way worse. But yeah, there's some times where some flaws can shine through. But overall, I thought he did an excellent job. So this leads me into the ugly, which is what could be some sin that is steeped into this work that might hold a Christian back from picking it up. And I break this down into 5 categories and rate them out of 10, starting with violence and brutality. Now, for violence and brutality, I'm going to give this a 6. Yeah, there's some really, really cool battle scenes that take place. I would say the battles, as far as like the violence and brutality, if I were to rate it with like a movie rating, I'd say it's probably PG. I don't even think I would throw it into PG-13. Maybe. I really don't think it crosses that threshold. I would say it's PG. I would say these are like Lord of the Rings type battle scenes. Really cool, epic in scale, big armies clashing together. But then you also get that really personal one-on-one battle within the more grand battle, which is really cool to see. It's a medieval fight, so that you're definitely going to see some violence and brutality, but I don't think it's over the top at all. So I don't think that there's anything that's going to hold you back as far as the violence and brutality goes. So this leads me into category 2, which is sexually explicit content. And this is an easy one. It's just not in there. So I'm going to give it a 0. It's absent from the book. There's nothing explicit in nature in here. So I'm going to give it a 0. So this leads me into category 3, which is language. Now for language, I'm going to give this a 1. Now the reason I'm giving it a 1 and not a 0 is because it's been a little while since I've read this book and I can't remember. I don't recall anything being in here, but from what I remember, that there were a few times where an expletive was used that was sort of in the same way that Brandon Sanderson uses expletives, which is he takes a different word that means something else to us and they use it as a curse, which I think is a very clever way to do that. So you're still emphasizing what the character is trying to convey to us or to other characters without actually being explicit yourself. Or I think there was a couple times where rather than showing the dialogue, it might say, and Davian cursed, blah, blah, blah. I think it was really well done, but I don't remember there being anything in here, but I'm going to say a 1 just to play it safe. So this leads me into category 4, which is gratuitous inclusions. Now for gratuitous inclusions, again, it's absent from the book, so I'm going to give this a 0. And there's nothing really else to say about it. I mean, it's just, yeah, it's not in there. And the final category is dark themes. Now for dark themes, I also include heavy themes. And for dark themes, I'm going to give this a 3. There's nothing really dark in here. There's nothing spiritual in nature at all. And there's very little that's heavy in here. I would say the heaviest thing in here is probably in the first few chapters and the last few chapters. There's a couple of scenes in particular that are a little bit heavier, but I don't think it's anything that I wouldn't feel comfortable handing this to my son and letting him read. I don't think it's heavy in that sense. Just some battles that take place. And again, you have to have conflict between good and evil. Otherwise, you don't really have a story at all. So yeah, for heavy themes, I'm going to give this a 3 because I wasn't bothered by it at all. I don't think anybody else really is going to be, but yeah, there's a couple of scenes in here where you're like, oh man, that was a little bit rough, but nothing that crosses that heavy threshold at all, in my opinion. So this leads me into the final question, which is, would I recommend this book to a Christian? And the answer is absolutely yes. I have gifted this book numerous times to many of my Christian brothers and sisters and to several pastor friends of mine, because for those of you that like fantasy and you are a Christian, read this book, because I really, really think that it is that breath of fresh air for us where we go, hey, Christians write good fantasy too. And it's not just C.S. Lewis or Tolkien, or maybe we don't have to go the indie published route because traditional publishers won't pick them up because they're Christian or whatever. So yeah, this was a real breath of fresh air for me personally. So I absolutely loved book 1. And like I said, I've gifted this to several pastors, and many of them, they all get to that one point, that one campfire discussion, and they're all like, what? And I'm like, yeah, it's that great. And he is that overt about it. I mean, it's very clear what James Allington is talking about here, and it is done so well and with such tact that I think that a non-Christian picking this up would absolutely love it. As a matter of fact, I know many non-Christians that have picked this up and do love it. And some of them even still see the connection there, and they're like, hey, that's great. That's a great way of explaining these things. Or I never thought about it that way. And that to me is like, well done, Mr. Islington. I know you'll never see this, but well done, brother. To have guys like Mike's Book Reviews talk about how much they enjoyed this series, and it definitely has overt Christian themes, like, fantastic, way to go. So would I recommend this to a Christian? Absolutely. Go and pick this book up. Go and support our brother James Islington, because it is great. So guys, overall, I absolutely love The Shadow of What Was Lost by James Islington. I hope you guys pick it up. If you have any questions about it, please leave me a comment down below. I will get to you immediately. I love talking to you guys down in the comment section. If you guys have any questions, comments, or even if you just want to nerd out with me about it, like, I'm here for it. So thank you guys so much for joining me and listening to me ramble about this book for a little bit. Thank you guys for liking and subscribing to the channel, but more than anything, please share these videos with your Christian brothers and sisters, because it is my goal for this channel to be a good resource to my brothers and sisters in Christ, so that maybe we can spend our time, money, and energy a little more wisely on things that honor the Lord. So thank you guys again so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.